It is Monday and my strength is still returning. I was going to say has returned, but I ain't quite there yet. But it's returning and I'm feeling better. Having taken a sabbatical and a Sabbath to just focus on restoring my energy with good rest and doing only the things that bring me joy. Of course, I had to pay my bills and stuff like that. That doesn't bring me joy, but the majority of my activity this week has just been around restoring my mind, my spirit, my body. So here I am, ready for this week's episode of Everybody at the Table. I posted a post earlier this week talking about kind of a lead of what we'd be discussing because I was reading this book. I'm really trying to get back into my book era, and y'all, I have the perfect, if you're in Georgia, book opportunity that I'm going to share next week. But I'm trying to get back into my book era. I purchased an autobiography of a Black corporate business leader, entrepreneur. I have followed her for probably 4 to 5 years. And from the outside, I've been really impressed with what she has been able to do. Reading her biography, I was so disappointed. I cannot express enough the disappointment I had in reading her book. And I really want to talk about this because it's been sitting with me. I didn't know if I wanted to discuss it because obviously this is a woman I admire, someone who's built a $1 billion brand in record time. And because I was really excited to read her story and to learn her journey and to see what she has scaled so quickly, I maybe had an over expectation of what I was going to get from the book, but I was completely dismayed and disappointed. Not because the business lessons weren't there, they were present, but because from start to finish, she went out of her way to sanitize history. She spent pages romanticizing the small southern town where she built her business, rewriting its racial history to make it seem as though Black and white folks had always lived in harmony, as if the Deep South had somehow escaped the reality of systematic racism. Much of the book, the journey, the history of her brand was steeped in the 1900s. And in her retelling of the story, she made it positioned as if Black people supposedly didn't feel threatened and were like white people, were able to eat with white people equally. They were comfortable with this existence and they didn't see any differences that the outside world was imposing on their community. She made it seem as if the white folks were not really racist and that everyone existed in this idealized, peaceable way. And I kept reading it, hoping it would shift, but it didn't. Now, at first, I thought maybe she's telling her story the way she sees it. But the deeper I got, the more I knew this was propaganda. It was propaganda. This was brand protection. She was carefully crafting a narrative that wouldn't disrupt her customer base, her investors, or the people in that town or that state who now benefit from her success, and she wouldn't be able to be as successful had she disparaged that community. Now, I don't expect her to go all out and tell the, I guess, the dirty truth, because that wasn't the point of her book. However, the hurdles she went through to excuse what we know is historical fact around Jim Crow law and racism in the South was unacceptable. I mean, to the point where I've never thrown away the book. I want to throw this book away. I don't even think anybody should read it. It's so steeped in propaganda. And she made sure to not offend the very people who historically would have made it impossible for someone like her to succeed. There's this tension, especially for Black folks and for minorities and for ethnic groups. When you're trying to succeed in corporate America or build a brand, you have to ask yourself the questions: do you stay in your niche? Are you going to speak directly to your community, knowing that you may limit your reach? Or do you make yourself palatable for the masses, making sure you're mainstream enough to scale? And I'm a little stuck here because I'm not going to dismiss that you give up something to be at the table. But how much do you give up? And how much is enough for you? And then when is it just overboard? At what point do we stop trading our truth for acceptance? And at what point do we stop making our history more comfortable for them? It reminds me of the model minority myth and how it was used to pit Asian Americans against Black Americans. During the Civil Rights Movement, the U.S. government and media actively pushed the idea of Asian Americans as the model, I'm quoting here, minority. They were painted as hardworking, law-abiding, and quiet. A community that didn't resist, that didn't fight the system. And as a result, they were given a path to economic and educational success. And the unspoken message to Black Americans has been, see, if you stop resisting, if you just assimilate, you'll get rewarded too. Now we know that's a lie. Assimilation doesn't protect you from racism. Playing by the rules doesn't guarantee a seat at their table. And the idea that proximity to whiteness will save you is a dangerous game that we've seen play out over and over again. So as I'm reading this book and saw how the author was bending over backward to paint this revisionist history of race relations in this town, I knew what it was. It was a business move. She was making sure she didn't lose access, didn't lose buyers, didn't lose favor, didn't lose tax cuts, and didn't make her investors feel uncomfortable. And I have to ask myself, at what cost? I'm thinking now about like Michelle Obama, right? Because there's a cost. And if you see that the Michelle Obama now compared to the Michelle Obama who started the journey with her husband to run for president, when she was first lady, she had to move a certain way. She had to fit the role. And now that she's out of the White House, she's reclaiming her Black girlness. She's in braids. She wore them at the DNC. She has started her new podcast, and she is in braids all the time now. And I think it's intentional of her reclaiming what she had to give up. I don't think I've seen Michelle not in braids in the last few years. She knows, and we know, that there were parts of herself she had to adjust to be in that role. And now she's fully stepping into herself again. So no, I'm not saying you don't have to make shifts. Sometimes there's costs to be at the table, the code switch that we all know about. But where is the line? I think that's something we each have to determine for ourselves. I know my line. I'm there, which is why we're talking. So I would love to hear from you in the comments. I know for many of us professionals, when you're building a business and you're building a brand, you have to think about how you move. And I would just love for us to chat about it, right? In the comments. Tell me, let's share together. Where is your line, or what did you have to give up? And what do you regret giving up and trying to be at their table? That's why I said it's time to build our own. Thanks as always for listening, for participating, for sharing, for giving me your feedback and sharing your voice. Until next time, take care and dine well.